Starting off in our number 10 spot, we have Burg Eltz. This German castle dates back to 1157, so it's no surprise that there are many myths and legends surrounding it. The most common tale is that of a young countess named Agnes. Agnes was betrothed or promised to another noble, but after meeting him, she called off their future wedding. Apparently, this guy was just the worst, and also, even if he wasn't, no one could blame her for calling off a wedding that she didn't want to have. But of course, things quickly went awry. This noble guy was mad that she had rejected him, so the scorned lover laid siege to the castle. Agnes fought to defend her home, but she passed away during the battle. This is the story behind why her spirit is said to haunt the Burg Eltz castle, many saying the strongest presence is felt in her former bedroom. It is said that her spirit is quite mournful. Apparently, even her battle armor and axe remain on display as well. In our number 9 spot today, we have Huska Castle. According to folklore, the Huska Castle, which is located just north of Prague in the Czech Republic, is built over a bottomless hole that leads directly to hell. The legend claims that the 13th century King Ottokar II offered a pardon to any prisoner who agreed to be lowered into the pit in order to report what was down there. The first prisoner who was lowered into the pit only lasted 30 seconds before he started screaming. Legend goes that when he was brought back up, his hair had turned white and he had aged 30 years. He was also telling stories of half-human creatures that flew through the darkness with horrific wings. The castle was built over the hole without things like a water source or any kitchens, and it is said that this was because it wasn't actually meant to be used by humans, but rather a place to capture the demons should they rise from this mysterious hole. The castle can now be visited as a tourist attraction, but enter at your own risk. In our number 8 spot today, we have Edinburgh Castle. The Edinburgh Castle is located in Scotland, and while it is one of the most popular tourist attractions, it is also apparently extremely haunted. It is said that many years ago, a piper was sent down into the tunnels that are below the castle, which connect it to the Royal Mile. The piper was told to play his instrument while down there so that his progress throughout the tunnels could be tracked, but halfway through his journey, the music stopped. Sadly, the piper was never seen again. This had led to the story of the piper continuing to haunt certain areas of the castle. Apparently, he still roams around, and sometimes even faint music can be heard. There is also apparently a drummer who is said to haunt the castle as well, but he only appears when the castle is about to be attacked. Honestly, I didn't know before this that I wanted a guard ghost for myself. In our number 7 spot today, we have Bran Castle. This is a castle located in Transylvania that is often known as Dracula's castle. This Romanian landmark is commonly referred to as the home of Bram Stoker's Dracula, and honestly, what could be more terrifying than Dracula? Well, perhaps the real person he is said to be inspired by, Vlad the Impaler, who is also said to have some sort of association with this castle. The building features beautiful articulate designs and vast staircases, but it is also said to be the home to the supernatural. Maybe it's just the lore and the legends surrounding this piece of historical architecture, or maybe there really is something more sinister going on here. In our number 6 spot today, we have Leap Castle. This castle sits in Ireland, and it was built somewhere between the 13th and the late 15th century. Legend has it that this castle has seen an unnerving amount of gruesome deaths, so it is no wonder it sits on a list of haunted castles. Story goes that during a struggle for power within the O'Carroll clan, who are said to at the time have been known for poisoning their dinner guests, one brother rammed a sword into another. This other brother was a priest, and at the time he was holding a mass in the chapel of the castle. The chapel is now called the Bloody Chapel, and it is rumored to be haunted by the priest. To make matters even worse, during renovations to the castle in the early 1900s, those working here ended up finding a secret dungeon below the chapel where they found a ton of human skeletons. The dungeon was designed in a way that prisoners would fall through a secret trapdoor where they would then fall onto wooden spikes on the ground, where they would then die a slow and painful death, but of course not without the members above them being able to hear this horrific happening. This is all to say that the rumors of the haunting make a lot of sense. In our number 5 spot today, we have Belcourt Castle. Belcourt Castle is located in Newport, Rhode Island, and it is a former summer cottage. Construction on the cottage started in 1891, with it being completed in 1894, and inside there is a ballroom. This ballroom is important because it is said that it holds a group of haunted chairs. People who have visited the castle have reported a ton of strange happenings regarding this very specific set of chairs. The reports include things like feeling chills racing up and down their spines, or feeling a strange sensation and a shift of energy while standing near the chairs, and some people have even explained how they have been pushed out of the chairs by an invisible force. I feel like just hearing these stories might be enough to explain the energy shift that some people are feeling, but actually being pushed out of the chair by some sort of force would be absolutely terrifying. In our number 4 spot today we have Château de Brissac. This is a castle located in the Loire Valley in France. For years people have shared stories about this castle, claiming that it is haunted. The most famous story has to deal with the castle's owner, Jacques de Brissac. One day Jacques caught his wife Charlotte cheating on him with another man, which is said to have driven him to take both of their lives. Now it is said that the souls of Charlotte and her secret lover still haunt the castle to this day. People have reported seeing Charlotte wandering the halls, often wearing a green dress, and in the chapel of the castle. Legend goes that she had gone to the chapel to try and absolve herself of her sins, maybe in the hopes of not being trapped in the castle any longer. Here is the scariest part of this whole story though. I mean, aside from the killing, which is clearly the worst part. Her ghost is said to have no face, and instead is just 2 black big holes. This is why she is often referred to as the lady in green, or the lady with no face. In our number 3 spot today we have Vorgard Castle. This castle sits in Denmark, and it features the works of some of the most famous artists ever, such as Raphael, Goya, and El Greco. But while that is a fascinating reason why many people visit the castle today, there are some who visit the castle thanks to some gruesome stories of the past. The most famous of these dark stories is that of Ingeborg Skeel, who acquired the castle in 1578. Apparently, he quickly took the life of the architect who designed it so that he could never design another building quite as beautiful. It's a pretty insanely selfish reason to take someone's life. People today still report seeing the ghost of the architect around the castle, especially at night and dressed in white. People also report feeling an extremely chilling sensation in the castle as they pass one of the most famous of its dungeons. This room was designed so that a person wasn't able to stand up or lie down completely, and there were no holes for light or air either. Haunted or not, the cruelties of the past are bound to send a shiver down anyone's spine. In our number 2 spot today we have the Palace of Versailles. In 1901, 2 women were wandering the gardens in Versailles trying to find Marie Antoinette's getaway when they found themselves lost. They ended up in front of an old farmhouse that had a really old plow sitting outside of it when they suddenly saw 2 men walk past them wearing long grayish coats with small 3-cornered hats. They could tell immediately that something was not right. They asked the men where to find the getaway, and the men told them to follow a path nearby that ended up taking them to a gazebo where their bad feeling got even worse. They saw another man at the gazebo that gave them dirty looks, when someone else came running up to them, warning the woman that they were going the wrong way. This person explained to them that they should cross a bridge and then they'll find what they're looking for. The women entered a building when they saw a woman sitting and painting and wearing a very old-fashioned dress. Suddenly they heard a door slam and saw a man running towards them. Again, this man explained that the entrance that they were looking for was around the back of the building and led them to their real destination where they met other tourists. When they finally got here, that bad feeling they had finally went away and they knew that they were safe. The woman then began discussing what they had seen because they were both pretty creeped out. It turns out that they didn't see the same things. One of the women said she never saw a woman painting. The 2 began to look at paintings of Marie Antoinette only to realize that the woman the one saw painting was actually Marie herself. They later also found out that the old farmhouse and the plow that they had seen had been removed from the property in 1789. It seems like these 2 women were definitely seeing some ghosts from the past. In our number 1 spot today we have the Forbidden City. The Forbidden City is located in Beijing, China, and it has quite a reputation. This building used to be the Imperial Palace, but it is now a museum and it sees a ton of tourists every year. This building has quite a history of death, so it is truly not surprising that it may be haunted. Since the palace opened to the public in the 1940s, there have been a ton of reports of paranormal activity, mostly relating to a woman dressed in white. I know a lady dressed in white is a bit of a trope at this point, but it is always scary to think of. After all, it's not like the ghost gets to decide its outfit. Anyway, apparently this lady strolls around the palace, but she is absolutely sobbing, which is very sad and quite eerie. I guess maybe it's better to encounter a sad ghost than an evil one though? At this point, I'm just not sure.
Coming in at number 10, we have the Tower of London. The Tower of London, the scene of much betrayal and bloodshed. There aren't enough hours in the day to list the amount of ghosts said to haunt this royal fortress fortress on the banks of the River Thames. The tower has been the prison and death spot of some of the most famous people in British history, including Henry VIII's wife Anne Boleyn. She is said to haunt the tower to this day. Also haunting the tower are two young princes who were killed on the orders of Richard III. The two youngsters appear most frequently to other children who visit the tower on school trips. The most dramatic ghost of the Tower of London though is the ghost of the Countess of Salisbury. Now she had a very grisly death there indeed. She broke free of her executioner, who instead of chopping off her head, hacked her up with an axe. She can be heard screaming and running riot in the castle's grounds. One tourist had a turn when she was on a guided tour of the tower. In one of the rooms used to imprison the former enemies of the crown, she simply had a breakdown. She started screaming, "There's so much suffering." Apparently the suffering can still be felt in the grounds today. On top of the human spectres, the tower is also said to be haunted by the ghost of a bear. A bear! Coming in at number 9, we have Screaming Montebello Castle. Montebello Castle is located in Switzerland near the border with Italy. Look at it, it is absolutely stunning. This castle was built in the 14th century, so it's had 6 centuries of history. The most enduring tale from the castle is the story of Gwendolina, an albino girl who lived in the castle and was kept there. Being an albino was socially scorned back in those days, and her mother tried to dye her hair with natural herbs to try and give it some colour, but it ended up turning blue, which earned her the nickname of Azarina. She was forbidden to leave the castle and her father was ashamed of her. One day, under very mysterious circumstances, the girl was killed. Stories do vary as to exactly how, but they all involve her letting out a string of blood-curdling screams. Azarina died on the 21st of June 1375, but her screams can still be heard in the castle today, and are loudest during the summer solstice, the anniversary of her death. Coming in at number 8, we have Himeji Castle in Japan. Himeji Castle was built in the 1300s in a hilltop in the Higo Prefect. Now the beautiful castle is home to a dark legend and a wronged ghostly presence. The story goes that once a servant by the name of Okiku was accused of losing valuable crockery, and the loss of the dishes seemed to be reason enough for her to take her life. Okiku was dragged from the kitchen and thrown into a well in the castle grounds, where she died. It is said that her ghost still haunts the castle today. She is said to haunt both the grounds and the kitchen. She can be heard counting dishes while sobbing, and then when she gets to 9, she runs shrieking and shrieking back into the well. Coming in at number 7, we have the ghost of Tuileries Palace. There is a ghost of a red man spotted outside Tuileries Palace in Paris. Now he was said to be a local butcher. Others say he was a henchman of the 16th century Queen Catherine de Medici. Both legends agree that his name was Jean and that the Queen had him killed because he held way too many secrets. A while after his death, a man was spotted in blood-red attire wandering the gardens. One man who spoke to his ghost, Neuville, reported that Jean swore vengeance to the Queen and the crown, and the Kingdom of France. Aristocrats of the palace thought that he was a sign of bad luck to come. Indeed, Marie Antoinette supposedly saw his ghost shortly before meeting the guillotine herself. Napoleon, it was said, quite liked him and would talk to him about war strategy. Of course. Those visiting the old palace today occasionally do spot the man in red, which is a bad thing indeed because it's supposed to be that, he's a sign of bad things to come. Coming into number 6, we have the Witches of Mousham Castle. Unternberg, Austria held its own gruesome witch trials between 1675 and 1690. These were the Zuberjackal trials, during which 139 people were killed. Now strangely for witch trials, most of those killed were men, 113 men to be precise. Those killed on suspicion of witchcraft were tortured first, and then afterwards they were burned alive or hung or decapitated. As you can imagine, as the scene of hundreds of brutal and unjust murders, the building carries a certain tension. And you can feel that tension even if you don't believe in ghosts, but if you do, it is thought that the spirits of the wronged plague the castle, crying and shrieking at night. One of the murdered was a 10-year-old orphan who was killed simply for being homeless. His cries are said to be the loudest. Beyond the story of the witch trials, there is a tale of werewolves in the palace. Now these stem back to the 1800s. Back then, deer and cattle began showing up dead around the grounds. Suspected werewolves were taken to the dungeon and killed. Some say they hear the growls of torture victims emanating from the dungeons at night even today. Coming in at number 5, we have Frankenstein's castle. You may recognize the name Frankenstein. Well, it is thought that this castle inspired Mary Shelley's famous novel of the same name. The castle is in the Darmstadt district of Germany in the Hesse region. The 13th century castle is thought to be haunted by the ghost of Johann Conrad Dippel, a bad man. Dippel was a physician and alchemist who wanted to resurrect the dead. He would rob graves by night and then cut up the bodies and use them in his elixirs and potions. It seems that he wanted to find a potion to resurrect the dead and also to generate immortality. In the end, drinking one of his concoctions actually killed him. It is thought that his spirits haunt the Frankenstein castle today, and so too do the many spirits of his unearthed experiments. He is most frequently spotted between Christmas and New Year sitting on the chapel roof. Coming in at number 4, we have the hellish Hoska Castle in the Czech Republic. Hoska Castle is a Gothic fort in the middle of nowhere, and it is said that even to this day, animals stay away from the castle walls. They prefer to be out in the wild rather than take shelter in the structure. In folklore, the castle is known as the gateway to hell. Legend has it that demons and dragons have been spotted pouring forth from the castle's vile mouth. Indeed, some even say that they've seen ghouls there today. To make matters worse, the castle was taken over by the Nazis during World War II. It is said that they tortured hundreds of people there, as well as conducting some really inhumane medical tests. Some think that the Nazis were drawn to the building as it was so hellish, others say it was simply a coincidence. Most do agree, however, that the property is haunted and only a few brave souls will step inside. Those that have claim that they have constantly felt like they're being watched. Coming in at number 3, we have Dracula's castle. Dracula. No. So Bran's castle, better known as Dracula's castle, is a stately 13th century castle linked to the dark legend of Dracula because of its Transylvania location, or modern day Romania. Though famous literary vampire aside, the castle was once home to the extra ghoulish Vlad the Impaler, thought to be one of the worst and most evil tyrants to ever live. Vlad the Impaler was alive until 1477, and in his 50-ish years on Earth, he caused literal hell. Many suspected that he himself was a vampire because of the ghoulish way that he would kill people. It is a popular legend that the vampire, or indeed the ghost of Vlad, haunt the castle today. Honestly, how terrifying. Coming in at number 2, we have Fyvie Castle in Scotland. I love Scotland. You will find plenty of ghost stories in Scotland, especially in Scottish castles. A little north of Aberdeen, you will find the breathtaking Fyvie Castle. Fyvie is haunted by the ghost of poor Lilias Drummond, who died of both an empty stomach and an empty heart. It seems that she had an abusive husband who would beat her, and in the end it is said that he locked her in a room and starved her to death in 1601. It seems that Lilias's ghost has haunted the castle ever since, and strangely appears as a green spectre. The night her husband took a new wife, she carved her name in the stone wall of her husband's bedchamber. Apparently this carving can still be seen there today. It seems that her spirit shows up when bad things are about to happen to the castle's owners or to the area surrounding the castle. Now, aside from her mournful spirit, it is also said that the castle is haunted by a trumpeter whose instrument can be heard when death is nearby. Usually I'm like, bring on the trumpets, but not when they signal death. Finally, coming into number 1 of the scariest, most haunted castles in the world, we have Leap Castle in Ireland. Leap Castle is often hailed as one of the most haunted castles in the entire world. The castle in County Offaly dates back to the 1200s and today is in partial ruin. The castle was owned by the O'Carrolls clan, but it was under constant siege. On one occasion, a priest was killed in a brawl between warring clans. Now sadly, his death took place in what is now known as the Bloody Chapel. The priest is said to haunt the chapel today and is pretty unhappy about his death, which, you know, fair. The story of the priest is one of the more notable deaths, but plenty of blood has been shed in the castle at the hands of the attackers and the O'Carrolls. The O'Carrolls were said to have been brutish back in the day, and they were thought to have captured and raped a woman who fell pregnant. When the woman birthed her child, unfortunately, the infant was killed by her captors. It is said that now her angry spirit haunts the castle, wielding a knife ready to stab in a fit of revenge. The worst spirit of all, though, is the spirit of something something that locals call it. It is around the size of a sheep and is an unidentified animal, and it has a decaying face. Before you even see it, you will smell it. It comes with a waft of rotting flesh and sulfur, which, ugh. Ghosts, one thing. Ghosts that smell, a whole different ballgame.
At number 10, we have plague notes. The Black Plague, again and again, we talk about it. Well, it's hard to do a list about castles without bringing up possibly the biggest event that took place while people were still living in them. Throughout Europe, notes and journals have been found about people dying of the plague and watching the world fall apart before their very eyes. The horrific tales can be read of people losing their children and detailed descriptions of what it was like to have the Black Death creep into their body. And the fact that they knew the end was near. I mean, a lot of people thought it was the end of the world, and for good reason. 1/3 of Europe died. In fact, so many people died that the temperature of the planet decreased, which gives me an idea of how we can fix global warming. Personally, this isn't a section of history I want to dive deep into, but if you at home love reading about pus-filled boils and rotting flesh, this would be a good place to get some light reading. At number 9, we have torture journals. Let's stay on the theme of horrible ways to die with some medieval torture devices. So I guess torture devices were similar to IKEA furniture. They both needed instructions. If you dig through some medieval texts, you might come across breakdowns on how to use the saw. Yeah, you know those giant 2-man saws? The kind where you have a guy on each end using teamwork to bring down a tree? The kind that make you think of lumberjacks and flannel? Well, before Paul Bunyan was using them to clear some forestry, medieval guards were using them to saw people in half. They would tie a guy upside down with one of his feet spread in each opposite direction. Then they would start at the gooch and just saw the guy right down the middle until you were split open like a Thanksgiving turkey. If I had to choose a way to die, that definitely wouldn't be high on the list. Also, there was the rack, where someone would be tied down with each one of their limbs going in a different direction. Their limbs would then be pulled until every joint was dislocated and you were possibly ripped to pieces. At number 8, we have the Brücken Mountains. A hand-drawn map of the Brücken Mountains in Germany was found in a castle in Scotland. It was a beautiful landscape filled with lush green trees, but what really stuck out in this picture was the red figures all over the map. Upon closer inspection, you can see that they are all witches. Brücken Mountain was famous for being known as a meeting place for witches and all sorts of other mysterious creatures. Basically, if you rode around on a broomstick, this was the place to be. It must have been a good time. I heard when minotaurs and elves get together, nobody gets to go home until everyone has downed at least 3 shots of tequila. The drawing was dated 1859, which is a little late for a castle discovery. I mean, by then people were already shooting people with muskets. Castles by then were kind of a thing of the past. But what creeps me out is what if this isn't so much of a drawing from someone's imagination, but what if it's the real deal? Maybe this place was a big meetup for the world's ghouls, and now they're just hiding, waiting for us to find them. At number 7, we have a love letter. This is a list of scary things. Why is a love letter on here? What's the hidden intention that makes this love letter nice and spooky? Sometimes you gotta read between the lines to know what's really going on. The love letter reads as followed. O Virgin, how will I address thee, or begin to write? O be favorable and ease my anxious mind. O lovely maid, were I to reveal my secrets of distress, you would certainly be kind and take pity on my stress and give me relief. This sounds awfully suspicious. I wonder what he means by take pity on me and give my stress relief. If I had to guess, this dude is just trying to get laid. A lot of beautiful words to just say please touch my wiener. This guy's note is basically the send nudes of old English times. She probably read this and was like, oh my god Bartholomew, can you keep it in your pants for 10 minutes? And don't act like you're not sending these letters out to every girl in the kingdom at 3 AM. I know what's going on. Ladies, stay woke. At number 6, we have Roman coins in Japan. Not really a message per se, but the coins did have writing on them, and they do tell us a lot about history. During an archaeological dig in Japan, a castle was dug up, and in this castle were a bunch of Roman coins dated back to 400 AD. What made this discovery so interesting was it was previously thought that these two nations never had contact. Maybe there was a bunch of Roman soldiers fighting samurai. I don't know if those timelines match up, but I'm sure someone in the comments will correct me. But realistically, the Ninja Caesar crossover never happened. It's much more likely that these coins were brought over to Japan somewhere in the Middle Ages, when these regions had more contact. Although it would be cool to have Roman troops running around with katanas. At number 5, we have the Dragsholm Castle Journals. You're watching a top 10 scary videos, so I'm going to assume that you at home are a fan of spooky things. If I am right and you find yourself in Denmark, you're going to want to check out the Dragsholm Castle. It's supposed to be the most haunted place in all of Denmark, and we know this because of some journals that were found in the castle. One story in particular is about a young royal woman who was in love with a commoner. She wanted to marry him, but this would have brought disgrace to their family, and her father would not have this, so he locked her away in a room. She stayed there trapped in the room for the rest of her life. Legend says that a couple of workers found her body rotted away in the wedding gown. Now she haunts the grounds of the castle. It's said you can see the White Lady walking at night. At number 4, we have the Château Castle graffiti. Just a heads up, this graffiti isn't going to be an artistic political statement like Banksy. The Knights Templar in France were more into satanic markings. King Philip started casting out members of his Templar for worshipping Baphomet, who is basically the devil. You know when you see depictions of the devil and he has a goat hell? Well, ding ding ding, that's him. It was long speculated that this wasn't true and that King Philip was finding ways to clean out the old guard that he didn't like, but historians later found carvings in the walls of the dungeons with satanic symbols in them. This could have happened after members of the Knights Templar got locked away. Once one of these guys was in prison, he might have tried to do a satanic ritual to get his devil god to help him out, but I don't think it worked. At number 3, we have the Chillingham Castle oubliette scratchings. This one is horrifying. First, I'll fill you in on what an oubliette is. It was a form of dungeon that was dug deep into the earth underneath a castle. The only way you could get into this was through a trapdoor that would be out of reach of the person who was locked away down there. It was basically just a giant pit. Think of a bottle that's put upside down where it's wide on the top and then slowly gets tighter. What would make these things even worse is these oubliettes were designed to be filled with human waste. So it would be so cramped in there and would slowly fill with turds. In the Chillingham Castle oubliettes in England, scratches were found on the walls. Not a message left behind in writing, but if you saw this, you would get the message across that you are going to die in this place. At number 2, we have Vlad the Impaler's letters. I'm going to break this one down for you in 2 sections. A quick rundown on who Vlad the Impaler is and what his letters said. Vlad the Impaler was a Romanian king who is known for his brutality. He got his name from impaling people on spikes and then setting them up on the walkway to his castle to scare invaders. He is also where the legend of Dracula comes from. Some people said he would dip his bread in the blood of his enemies. He would send out letters, and I had to do some digging to try and find out what these letters said, and this is what I got. First letter read, "The thirst for blood drives me now. Rarely do I have my mind focus on my wife or kingdom. A man with no hair and strange garbs appeared in my castle yard. I know enough of the occult to know he could not be from our land. I took him to my secret chambers where he told me next to nothing about his origins." We only have so much time, so I can't dive into this any deeper, but it goes on for a while and there are very strange things that he writes about that make you think he could actually have been Dracula. At number 1, we have the Diary of Joachim Martin. Strap yourself in because this one is a crazy story. So renovations were taking place in a French castle. They tore up some of the floorboards and they found journals written on the bottom of the floorboards, left by a carpenter back in 1880. Right off the bat, this is a culture class. You have a blue-collar working man trying to fix up a castle. That must have been a slap in the face every time he walked in the door. The journals covered a lot of his life. Some stuff about raising a family, some stuff about working. There were 72 entries and the best of them all were the deep dark secrets that he never told to anyone. He left them on these floorboards so people would find them after he died. One of the entries starts like this. In 1868, I was passing at midnight before the doorway of a stable. I heard groans. It was the mistress of one of my old friends. She was giving birth. Joachim's buddy, who was named Benjamin, had a mistress and he got her pregnant not once, not twice, but 6 times. Remember, everyone at home, this is before condoms were a thing. Now because Benjamin and this mistress weren't married, these kids were bastards. And what did Benjamin do with these bastard kids? Well, he killed them. He killed them and buried 6 of these kids. Joachim goes on to write this. This criminal is now trying to screw up my marriage. All I have to do is say one word and point the finger at the stables and they'll all go to prison. But I won't do this. He's my old childhood friend and his mother is my father's mistress. What the hell is going on? This is like Days of Our Lives. Killing babies, mistresses, trying to bang your friend's wife. Your father is banging his mom. Maury, Maury, Maury. So much going on.